So I've instructed you about how to do interviews. For each of your interviews, you should have some notes of what they said and any reflections that you have on that. Our goal is to try to help you turn those notes into insights. And I realized that this was necessary after teaching this a few semesters and realizing that some students had a really difficult time trying to understand insights from their interviews. I put a little graphic here at the bottom right of the screen that shows this game that was around when I was a little kid called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And the idea was that you could use these clues about geography to help find this person that's traveling over the world. And so basically that's kind of what we're doing, is we're trying to use a bunch of clues to learn about value proposition and customer segments in an organized way. So you should have your notes with you, and right now what you have written down is how it came chronologically. So now you're going to reorganize the information in the interview into categories so that you can learn from that. If you don't have those, you can pause the video and come back to it. I created this little sheet on Canvas that helps to organize this information, but you don't have to use this sheet. So what I'd like you to do is take your raw data, all of the notes that you have, and then write things from those notes that are related to different categories. If they mention something that was related to, either good or bad, related to your first value proposition, and I set this up as if you have two value propositions and two different types of customer segments. So for example, I'll use the idea of the app to help kids with auditioning for musical theater. And one is to reduce anxiety and the other is to improve performance. Anything that they mention related to anxiety or lack of anxiety would go in this first box. Anything they mention in relation to performance, improving, or problems with performance would go in their second value proposition. And if there's something else that seems significant related to problems that they're seeing, you would put that in this other. And then if you're thinking about how to classify your people, if you think that age matters, like high school versus middle school, you would put information there. If there's something else like gender, you could record that here. If you think there's something else that you think is important, you could put that down here in their customer segments. So I'll give you some time to work on that, and so you can pause the video and then go to the next slide. So look at each direct quote that you recorded. So you should record quotes. Why did you record it? Why was it interesting? Think about that. What does it reveal about the pains and gains that they have? And then try to succinctly describe what that quote means. So for the example of the app for helping with accompanist, they may say some things about some experience they had auditioning, but then you would summarize that saying, well, conceptually what they're saying was, it's hard to follow an accompanist. Or they may have some other quote that means, well, there's not many reliable accompanists around. Or maybe they tell a great story about how great it was when they auditioned, and so that you would put that in the category never has issues with auditioning. Now you're taking these quotes, these specific things that they said, and now you're trying to put into your own words more general category that describes what they said. Do that with all your notes. And again, here we're focusing mostly on value proposition. This is going to take you some time, so pause the video and then you can come back to the next slide. You're going to do the same thing with the customer segments. This is going to be a lot easier, so you're going to classify them, and you're going to try to think about the things that you wrote down on your BMC that you think matter, whether it's age or gender or whether they're high school student. But you're also going to try to think about, is there anything else that you think is driving what they said that you think is important? Is it that they have a play coming up, or they have a particular type of smartphone? You may not have thought of this when you originally filled out the BMC, so you're trying to search for, like, why is this person having this experience? What are the indicators that would drive them to have this experience, either good or bad, and is it relevant for me? So you're going to record that under the customer segments. So again, you're going from raw data to some of your own thinking. You're mixing in what you think might be important. Okay, so now that you've done that, you're going to try to take that information to indicate whether this is good news for you or bad news for you. And the way that you know this is good news or bad news with the value propositions is whether it aligns with what you thought was a problem or whether it indicates that there's not a problem. So for this app for auditioning for musical theater, the team originally thought that the two value propositions were that the app would help fit to your pitch better and would help them deal with changing songs. So they went through the interview, and I'll just give an example here. One of the quotes was, if you're trying out for a part, you have to have quite a range to work with the music that they provide. So this person is talking about a range of being able to sing different notes. So fitting to their pitch, they think that that's not really that big of a deal, because in order to actually sing in a part in musical theater, you have to have quite a range. You can't expect things to fit to your pitch. So this is an example of this person said something that says, well, they don't have the problem that we think that they have, or they don't think that fitting to their pitch is actually a problem in auditions. So we would put that in that value proposition for that person, that specific person, is a fail. Now there would be another quote here that says, I had a disaster of being asked to sing another song and my accompanist totally butchered the new song. So that's a really good quote that indicates that that person had a problem dealing with changing songs. Therefore, the app that helps to address that problem is useful. So that would be a pass, meaning that this value proposition of dealing with changing songs is actually something of value for that particular person. And then you might have quotes that don't really fit the value propositions that you started with, and this is why we do interviews. Sometimes you're going to learn things through the interviews that you never thought of before. And in this case, one of the groups that I had that was working on this definitely did. They had someone who said, I never have issues with auditioning, but I have a hard time practicing with accompaniment. So that's an indication that there is a problem, but it's not the problems that we have identified before in the first two value propositions. So that is a pass, but it's on a new value proposition, so you'd have to come up with something like help with practicing. You're going to classify each person according to each of your value propositions, and that's why I told you in your feedback that you should try to reduce the number of value propositions that you have and make it succinct, because you need to assess each person according to each value proposition. So you should have a pass or a fail for each value proposition. And as I show here, we're going to record passes as ones and fails as zeros. And we do that just because it's easier to deal with the data later. Your goal here is not to indicate that you are right all the time. Your goal is to try to figure out if there really is a problem that you think that there is. And if not, you want to try to pivot to do something else, because then your selling will actually be more successful. So be honest with yourself. Don't waste your time. So then you could record this in a summary sheet. So I'll put this on Canvas as well. Of course, you can do this on your own piece of paper. You're going to record everybody that you interview. You're going to put their name and then how they classify according to the customer segments that you think are important, whether that's gender or age, or maybe if you think, in this case, if they're looking at high school versus middle school, they would record high school or middle school. Or if they think income plays a role, they would put a customer segment, upper versus lower income. So you're going to record the different types of customer segments, and you can fill in this, instead of just saying customer segment 1, 2, 3, put the real words in there. And then you're going to do the same thing with value proposition. Fit to your pitch is value proposition 1. You would fill that in, fit to your pitch. And Sophia is a fail on that, meaning that she didn't give any indication that fitting to her pitch was important. Then you would have dealing with changing of songs. She did indicate that in her interviews. And then the third one that they came up with was help with practicing. So you could put a third one here. You could create a new third one and say help with practicing. And that, for her, that was a pass. And then you're going to put some quotations here so that you'll remember about that. This is just you trying to keep track of everything that you do and doing it in a really good way. You're not going to actually turn in that piece of paper. You're going to take a picture of it and put it in with your interview report to show that you went through this process. So that's what you have so far. So basically, you're going to follow this process and you should have all of this turned into data and some quotes. I'm going to show you what to do with this data in the next video.